The election. Will Virginia have a black governor? Iran-Contra. General Secord admits lying to investigators. Massachusetts. Kitty Dukakis is out of danger after drinking rubbing alcohol. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. Day after Election Day, race and abortion among the closely watched issues in state and local contests, including a still unsettled squeaker in Virginia. It could be several more weeks before final certification of whether Douglas Wilder has been elected the first black governor in U.S. history. By unofficial count, Wilder is about 4,000 votes ahead of Republican Marshall Coleman. That's out of almost 2 million votes cast. Coleman refuses to concede. He says he will ask for a recount. Here in New York City, another close race, but clear-cut victory for Democrat David Dinkins, now elected first black mayor of the nation's largest city. As for abortion, Republicans seen as aligned with President Bush's rugged anti-abortion stand mostly came up losers. Our chief political correspondent, Bruce Morton, begins our coverage of who won, who lost, and why. Bruce?
Dan, most of the races were closer than expected, but blacks won in a lot of mostly white places.
I am here to claim to be the next governor of Virginia.
Doug Wilder seems to have won in Virginia, 17% black.
Yesterday, we passed another milestone on Freedom's Road.
David Dinkins will be mayor of New York, 25% black.
White, black, Latino, people have welcomed me into their home.
John Daniels will be mayor of New Haven, 30% black.
A thinking city and a city that cares.
Norman Rice will be mayor of Seattle, 10% black. They are a new kind of black candidate needing white votes to win.
You don't hear any of these guys saying what Jesse Jackson's saying, our time has come. They're not running as the first black or the black.
If you talk to almost any governor, senator, or president, you'll find that they've paid their dues at a lower level. I think blacks are now beginning to do that same political promotion route.
Race remains an underlying issue. In New York City, Democrat Dinkins got just 26% of the white vote. A quarter of the people who backed Republican Rudolph Giuliani said stories about Dinkins's personal finances changed their vote. Perhaps a way of voting white without seeming racist? Thomas Edsel is writing a book about race and politics.
There is a growing process, but I think in the long run it's going to be tougher than for the Irish and the Italians and for all the groups that have moved up the ladder. For blacks, it's going to be significantly tougher.
Abortion was a big issue in New Jersey, where Democrat James Florio buried Republican James Corder in the race for governor, and in Virginia.
I think abortion played the role of saying to people of Virginia, look at the differences between these two candidates. One wants to carry us back, one wants to move us ahead.
But it was not all pro-Wilder. A third of the Virginia voters in our CBS News New York Times exit poll said abortion was their most important issue. Wilder got 55% of them. The message seems to be look for the center and be consistent.
The message is not that pro-life candidates can't win. The message is that pro-life candidates who aren't certain of their position, vacillate on that position, and try to be all things to all voters are going to be rejected.
If there was an overall theme to yesterday's voting, it was be moderate. Democrat Florio in New Jersey got a lot of people who voted for George Bush a year ago. Most of the winners ran as moderates, not as ideologues of either left or right. Dan?
Thank you, Bruce. More now about the issue of abortion and how it seemed to damage Republican candidates aligned with or simply put on the defensive about President Bush's adamant anti-abortion position. White House correspondent Wyatt Andrews reports the Republican worry about it goes beyond the just-ended Campaign 89 to Campaign 90 and beyond.
1 year after his own landslide victory, today was a bad day for President George Bush. Wait till next year. Mr. Bush had campaigned in all 3 of yesterday's major races and then watched as the Republicans lost each one.
There's no way for the Republican Party to find any silver lining at all in what happened yesterday.
Elated Democrats today said they found the abortion issue to be the weak spot in Mr. Bush's popularity and a newfound strength for Democrats.
This morning's election results are a wake-up call for George Bush. If you're out of touch with the pro-choice majority, you're out of office.
The new muscle of pro-choice voters was clearest in Virginia, where the state's normally Republican suburbs voted heavily for the pro-choice Democrat Doug Wilder. Wilder's apparent election has scared some Republicans so badly, they now want the party to drop its anti-abortion position.
What the Republican Party needs today is a broadened tent, not social litmus test, a new spirit of tolerance.
If we go in 1990 and abortion is the issue, and especially if it's the last issue, which is coming in November, we will lose on that issue.
But the White House is saying that a flip-flop on abortion is exactly the wrong response.
The strategy is, on an issue like abortion, establish your position based upon principles, and then you stick to that position.
That hang tough strategy comes from a belief that the Republican Marshall Coleman got in trouble in Virginia not because he was anti-abortion, but because he led his opponent define the abortion debate and make abortion the issue of the campaign. Whether this stick-to-it approach works next year, it's obvious Republicans are suffering right now. This was supposed to be the year President George Bush staked his party's claim to represent the new American mainstream, and that clearly hasn't happened. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News, the White House.
In Boston, doctors treating Kitty Dukakis disclosed today that she was hospitalized for a severe reaction after drinking a small amount of rubbing alcohol. They did not comment on whether she was knowingly trying to hurt herself. The wife of Massachusetts Governor and former Democratic presidential candidate Michael Dukakis has openly acknowledged in the past her problems with stress, drugs, alcohol, and depression. Bob Fall has our report.
Michael Dukakis spent the day at the bedside of his wife, who one key former aide now says suffers from manic depression.
Governor, how's your wife? How is Mrs. Dukakis? What happened?
Little more than 1 month ago, Kitty Dukakis returned to her Brookline home from a week of camping out and rafting in the Utah wilderness.
All right. Look at her. She look great.
Today, though, at a Boston hospital, Governor Michael Dukakis refused to discuss his wife's condition, which doctors now say was aggravated by her grueling speaking tour last week in Indiana. Recently, said one doctor, she drank a small amount of rubbing alcohol and had what he called a severe reaction. While Mrs. Dukakis is depressed, exhausted, and has the flu, he went on, she is completely out of danger.
The next First Lady of the nation, ladies and gentlemen.
When that did not happen, doctors say the strenuous campaign took its toll on the 52-year-old mother of three, who at the beginning of Dukakis' campaign admitted a 26-year addiction to diet pills, and who in February spent 30 days in a Rhode Island clinic for treatment of alcoholism.
Now I know that I am an alcoholic.
Her doctor says Kitty Dukakis and the family are now deciding what to do next. But one source close to Michael Dukakis said the governor has decided not to resign after what one family friend said was a desperate cry for help. Bob Fall, CBS News, New York.
Still to come on your CBS Evening News, David Martin on charges that IBM was allowed to write its own computer ticket with the U.S. Navy. And John Blackstone on occupational injuries of the computer age.
Special K. Move the fat.
How fast does Dristan nasal spray start to work?
Faster than a teenager can answer the phone.
Dristan works fast to relieve nasal congestion, even sinus pressure. For relief,
Faster than tumbleweed in a tornado.
Dristan nasal spray. It's faster than...
To my beautiful wife.
It's nice to know he still loves the way you look. And if you wear dentures, you can count on Effordent to freshen up dentures and clean away stains so well. With Effordent, all he'll notice is you.
A1, it's how steak is done.
A criminal plea bargain deal today by a former Oliver North operative and key conspirator in the Missiles for Iran, Where Did the Money Go case. Retired U.S. Air Force General Richard Secord pleaded guilty to lying to investigators. He said he would now cooperate in coming trials of other Iran-Contra defendants. CBS News law correspondent Rita Braver reports Secord decided to cut a deal just days before his own scheduled trial on 12 criminal charges.
Arms merchant Richard Secord pleaded guilty today to one felony count of making false statements to Congress about his role in the Iran-Contra scheme.
General Secord's lie came when he denied that anything of value from the arms sales in the Iran-Contra affair went to the benefit of Oliver North.
In fact, prosecutors said they had evidence to prove that Secord used arms profits for a home security system for North and a $200,000 secret Swiss bank account for the North family. Today, Secord admitted to lying to the Congressional Committee about the security system, but still disputed setting up the secret account. Nevertheless, the former Air Force general said he would plead guilty to the charge. Judge Aubrey Robinson asked Secord, recently convicted in 2 drunk driving incidents, if he were using any substance that might affect his ability to understand the guilty plea. No, Secord replied. The judge did not set a sentencing date, but reminded Secord that he faces a maximum of 5 years in jail.
This is a fair, just, and responsible solution to a difficult case.
Secord would not discuss why he made the deal, but he was facing 11 other counts involving perjury and misuse of funds. And there's speculation that with financial and other personal problems, he did not want to go through a protracted trial. As part of the plea agreement, Secord promised to cooperate in the upcoming trials of 2 other alleged Iran-Contra conspirators, former National Security Advisor John Poindexter and moneyman Albert Hakim. But sources say that Hakim has been engaged in his own plea negotiations of late. Rita Braver, CBS News, Washington.
Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega offered to renew a ceasefire with the U.S.-backed Contra rebels today, but only if they agree to disband. The 2 sides are due to begin talks tomorrow at the UN. At the White House today, President Bush met with Ortega's leading opponent in elections set for next February. Violeta Chamorro is in the United States to raise funds for her anti-Sandinista campaign. The power struggle in Lebanon turned lethal again today. A car bomb exploded in Muslim West Beirut an hour before the scheduled arrival of the newly elected president, Renee Mouawad. 4 people were killed, 19 wounded. Mouawad was elected at a meeting last Sunday in Syrian-controlled North Lebanon. He is opposed by Army Commander Michel Aoun, who is still holed up in the ruins of Beirut's presidential palace.
Take my word for it, this is utopia. Am I talking about scenery, harp music, the betterment of man? No, I'm talking burgers. I had the most perfect hamburger in my life here. It was so juicy and delicious, thought I was in heaven, so to speak. Utopia does exist. I've eaten there. And if you ever reach Utopia, take my advice. Order the hamburger. Beef. Real food in Utopia, Texas.
I'd rather switch than itch. So I switched to Tegrin.
Tegrin medicated shampoo controls all the major causes of itching and flaking, so Tegrin is more than strong enough for tough dandruff like yours.
Wouldn't you rather switch than itch?
Another day is turned to night. Close your eyes, say goodnight.
Sominex has the one ingredient doctors recommend most to help you fall asleep safely without worry. Sominex.
Good night.
The evaluation committee is in your office.
This is my husband, Paul. He's under a lot of pressure. But now he's taking charge of his health, eating right by cutting down on cholesterol and saturated fat. That's why I cook with Puritan, with no cholesterol and proven 94% saturated fat-free. Better than any other kind of oil.
You like Paul's sneakers before dinner?
Hey, Mr. Principal, carry your book?
Anytime.
Paul's feeling great, and I am too.
Puritan, make it your oil for life.
The fabric of communist East Germany kept unraveling today. Another round of desperate moves by the communist government failed to slow the process. Party leader Egon Krenz, fighting to cling to his own position, sacked and replaced the entire ruling Politburo. But that didn't stop the stream of East Germans leaving for the West, and it seemed only to strengthen the popular movement for an end to one-party communist rule. Alan Pizzi is on the scene.
They do this guard change once a week in East Berlin, and today they had another kind of change. For the first time in the history of the communist bloc, East Germany's entire ruling Politburo stepped down. But in keeping with the new spirit of rapid change, it was replaced within hours. At a rally staged to show support for the move, thousands of Communist Party members demanded Egon Krenz speak to them. Krenz kept his job, and there was disappointment that the new Politburo looked almost as hardline as the old one. Krenz said the Communist Party knew what people wanted and urged patience, but that was in short supply. Complained one woman, why don't they just get rid of everyone who caused this mess? The policy-making Central Committee started a 3-day special session today to deal with what one called the serious crisis.
We will have a very good solution for our problems.
But the problems continue to get worse. Nearly 50,000 East Germans have fled to the West in the last 5 days alone.
This exodus can only be slowed down or stopped if we will be able to win over the people's confidence.
But confidence in the government is in short supply these days. The old Politburo was ousted because its hardliners would not agree to the dilution of Communist Party power. It's an open question as to whether the reform politicians in the new one will meet the demands of the still illegal opposition. Thousands of opposition supporters have been filling the streets to call for free elections and the abolition of the Communist Party monopoly on power. The Politburo's publicity point man said the Central Committee would consider new election laws that might allow opposition groups a chance to take part.
We are dealing here with an acceleration of history, which makes forecasting practically as difficult as weather forecasting.
One sure thing is that the government is no longer regulating change to its own measured pace. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, East Berlin.
West German Chancellor Helmut Kohl today offered new economic aid to East Germany, but only if the communist government makes fundamental changes. Kohl said they must give up one-party rule, allow free elections, and a free market economy. Otherwise, he said, quote, our help will be in vain. Kohl also hinted at renewed efforts for German reunification, saying there are fewer reasons than ever for Germany to be divided now. West German police say a ferry boat sailing from Hamburg to England collided with a container ship tonight as the ferry headed out into the North Sea. Police say 2 people are known dead and several seriously injured.
Mr. Kayam, I hate shaving.
Doug, try this Remington microscreen. It shaves as close as a blade or your money back. No other shaver makes that promise.
Smooth. Now I know why he bought the company.
The Remington microscreen.
At Red Lobster, we know how you love shrimp. Lots of shrimp. So here's 26 shrimp, 4 different ways, all in one dinner. Succulent. Sizzling. Crispy. Savory. It's the ultimate shrimp lover's feast. 26 shrimp, 4 different ways. This week at Red Lobster. And Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, enjoy the shrimp and crab feast, just $10.95. And kids shrimp dinner, all week, just $1.95.
There's only one thing I used to hate worse than having to wash out my pantyhose every night. And that was having to throw them out.
Pantyhose that last are no nonsense.
I think that the future is so fascinating and so interesting for me. I feel blessed. I'm far less pressured as I get older than when I was young. As far as having aches and pains, I'm no different than anyone else. Yes, I do have my share. And it's those times that I use Bufferin. Bufferin, my brand of aspirin, is different than plain aspirin. It has buffers that make it gentler to your stomach.
Bufferin, so you can do the things you want to do.
The Bush administration said today it is holding up a sale of new defense technology to Israel because of what are described as the president's concerns that Israel may be sharing U.S. secrets with South Africa. A high official said the administration is, quote, greatly concerned that Israel may have given South Africa U.S. technology for a missile the South Africans tested last July. As a result, he said, the president is applying, quote, special scrutiny to an Israeli request for supercomputers. Accusations today that one of this nation's best-known computer companies stacked the chips in its own favor on $1 billion worth of U.S. defense contracts with the knowledge and consent secretly of the U.S. Navy. Defense Department correspondent David Martin reports on IBM, the Navy, high-tech contracts, and charges of collusion in high places.
The Pentagon buys computers for everything from issuing paychecks to doing scientific research. And today, executives from 6 computer companies complained to Congress that the Navy has rigged bids to give industry giant IBM the inside track.
We all felt that we stood no chance of obtaining computer contracts from the Navy on a fair and competitive basis.
The Pentagon's Inspector General investigated one proposed contract by the Navy Personnel Command and found that instead of shopping for the best product at the lowest price,
it appeared to us that the Navy Personnel Center favored or wanted IBM from the start.
Why IBM?
I think the committee will probably find that some individuals involved in this probably took gratuities.
The gratuities apparently took the form of cut rates for lodging at an IBM data processing institute, complete with golf course. The relationship became so cozy that a Navy officer wrote a memo about one proposed contract saying, quote, "It shows bias or at least the lack of a functioning brain." Even IBM thought it was getting too good a deal.
We told them that it was not defensible.
On more than one occasion, IBM actually helped the Navy write the specifications for contracts on which it was bidding.
And so here are government employees being told by you what they can do and not do, right?
The result?
We particularly have had the problem of the specifications being slanted towards IBM's capabilities and products.
About $1 billion worth of computer contracts were involved.
It's big dollars and it ought to be competed and the government ought to be getting the lowest price.
Although today's hearing focused on the Navy, the committee is expanding its investigation to include NASA, the Treasury Department, and the National Institutes of Health. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
The Senate gave final approval tonight to a slow increase in the national minimum wage, the first increase since 1981. The minimum wage will go from the current $3.35 an hour up to $4.25 by April 1991. President Bush earlier this year vetoed a larger minimum wage increase. Mr. Bush is expected to sign this version, which also includes a new lower minimum wage for teenagers. Southwest Bank of St. Louis today cut its prime lending rate 0.5 point down to 10%. Other banks are expected to follow suit. The bank acted after signs the Federal Reserve is easing credit to fight off recession. It's estimated about half of all home equity loans are tied to the prime rate.
These are oats. Something you've been hearing quite a lot about lately. But while some cereals turn oats into processed oat flour, new Oat Bake from Kellogg's uses only whole oats. Then we simply bake them with nuts, raisins, and spices for the first cereal that combines the goodness of whole oats with the goodness of baked taste. New Kellogg's Oat Bake, the whole oat cereal with the crunchy baked taste.
This is new Hellman's cholesterol free.
Will I like it?
It has 0% cholesterol.
Will I like it?
It tastes 100% Hellman.
I like it.
I knew you'd like it.
I knew I'd like it.
New Hellman's cholesterol free with half the fat. Bring out the best.
How about dessert from Presto Salad Shooter?
Shoot some slices, salad shooter.
Point and shoot right into dessert or fruit salad.
Shoot some shreds, salad shooter.
For chocolatey, nutty dessert toppings.
Shoot it fast, shoot it neat, shoot it pretty salad shooter.
Presto Salad Shooter Slicer Shredder. Clean up easy, dishwasher safe, small enough to store anywhere. Great salads and much, much more.
Salad shooter.
Now a cordless rechargeable salad shooter too from Presto.
Now a great cherry taste comes to Maalox Strength. New Maalox Plus Cherry Cream Tablets with the medicine doctors recommend most and a cherry taste you'll love. New Maalox Plus Cherry Cream Tablets. Strong relief for all your Maalox moments.
The dawning of the age of the high-tech hazard. That's what critics say faces the American worker. Earlier this week, Chrysler became the first automaker to reach agreement with its major union on the issue of what's called repetitive motion injuries. But the problem doesn't stop at the assembly line. As John Blackstone has found out, it now poses a growing threat to office workers.
Keith Harmon never imagined his job was dangerous. Now he's the victim of an occupational hazard that is crippling people who do nothing more strenuous than office work.
I get to the point where
I have to press a key on the computer, and it just sends shooting pains all the way up through the arm.
It is being called the industrial disease of the information age. Some offices are beginning to look like hospitals.
It seems crazy on the surface. I mean, the typing could do something like that.
But typing with the speed and long hours now possible with computers is causing injuries that are as painful as they are surprising. Linda Brown ruined her hands answering directory assistance calls for the U.S. West Phone Company.
I've accepted that for the rest of my life I will have that pain. And it will never go away, and it will never get better. I have different kinds of splints for different kinds of work.
So many reporters and editors at the Fresno Bee have been afflicted that the California Occupational Safety and Health Administration ordered the newspaper to buy new adjustable desks and chairs, but that is only a partial answer.
Bottom line, I don't think that there's going to be any hope for a handful of us. It's just a matter of time.
I got where I am after 22 years in the news business. I don't want to go home tonight and tell my family that from now on, Daddy's going to sell Florsheim shoes. I'm scared to death. I'm scared to death.
These injuries are not new. Assembly line workers have long suffered from tendinitis, carpal tunnel syndrome, and other repetitive stress injuries.
Men, not gadgets, make a great newspaper.
But in the days before computers, office workers rarely had the problem. Their fingers weren't glued to the keyboard. They pushed the typewriter carriage back, changed the paper, even did some jobs with a pencil. Directory assistance operators once actually used directories.
At the office, the bingo, or the lounge.
Operators now answer one call every 25 seconds, 1,000 calls a day.
I want to be treated like a human being and not a machine. U.S. West now is saying, no, you go on. It doesn't matter if you hurt. We don't care. We want this goal met.
After nearly 200 operators complained of injuries, U.S. West spent $2 million on new equipment.
We have gone from having a large number of complaints in 1987 to only 15 complaints in 1989.
But some people may be afraid to complain. This year, the company fired 11 of those with the worst injuries. Rick Pearsall was one of them.
To a large part, the dismissals are a way of sending a message to the employees. And to a large degree, that message worked. You have employees right now that are working that are afraid to say they hurt.
There is no certain way to avoid repetitive stress injuries, and there are no sure cures.
3, 4, 5.
Some victims have had surgery as many as 6 times. The lack of knowledge is leaving victims helpless. In Fresno, Pam Baker has been off work since June. She has to depend on her daughter to do such basic tasks as cooking. She can't even hold her grandchild.
Nobody has any answers. That's the major frustration.
Occupational health experts predict repetitive stress injuries will be the #1 danger in the workplace in the 1990s. The modern office, apparently comfortable and technologically advanced, may turn out to be an electronic sweatshop. John Blackstone, CBS News, San Francisco.
And that's part of our world tonight. Dan Rather for the CBS Evening News. See you tomorrow. Good night.
I'm Harry Smith.
And I'm Kathleen Sullivan. Tomorrow, David Robinson, after 2 years in the Navy, is now playing pro basketball.
Also, Florence Henderson remembers the Brady Bunch on CBS This Morning.
This is CBS.
And